It's Joshua Vergara for Tab Times. What's going on, everybody? And we're taking a look at the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus up against the Samsung Galaxy Note 7. Now, before we get into this, we will say that with the amount of time that we thus far had with the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, we're taking this quicker look at the two devices, and we'll have a more comprehensive versus available for you later on. And also, despite the recalls and all of the problems that are being publicized about the Note 7, we are still looking at it as a full-on device without that in mind, because you can get it replaced and working properly anyway. We'll start off, of course, with the way that they look and feel. The Galaxy Note 7 has been given a more refined look to the design language that they adopted a couple of generations ago. And that would, of course, be the dual glass panels held together by a metal frame. But this Note 7 has a somewhat narrower feel, mostly because of its refined symmetrical design. There is a curve on the front that the Note 7 now has in the Edge display, and there's also a curve on the back that meet the frame in the middle to provide a very smooth feeling side. But from there, pretty much all of the different tropes in the design language of the Note 7 return from previous generations. The same can also be said for the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, where the changes are more functional rather than aesthetic. The main change comes in the home button, or rather the home surface, because it's not really a button anymore. You're not going to be pressing down on a physical piece of metal or plastic. What you're doing is putting your finger down onto a concave surface that then uses force touch to know if you are pressing down hard enough on it. And if you do, you'll have a haptic vibration feedback that pretty much feels like you're pressing down on a button, but to be honest, it does still feel kind of weird to us in these first couple days. At least with the Note 7, you do have a few changes that actually change the way that the phone looks, but at least in the iPhone 7, if you still love that design language, then it's here to stay, and it also comes in a couple of new colors. The other thing that the iPhone has been able to do this year is provide IP67 resistance. So you have water and dust resistance, which is also something that the Note 7 can boast. We put both of these phones into a drop test scenario, and the Note 7 was actually the one to break on its screen, mainly because it landed on that edge, and the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus were able to survive even drops from about 7 feet. Take that for what you will between these two devices, but at the very least, you can be sure that these phones can take a tumble or a splash and still be able to keep going. The displays for both of these devices tend to be very far apart, and that is usually the case with iOS versus Android. The Note 7 has a Quad HD display at 5.7 inches, which makes it a larger device than most out there, but that could also be said for the iPhone 7 Plus, which has a 5.5-inch display despite its body being that little bit bigger than the Note 7. The iPhone 7 screen comes in at 4.7 inches with 1334 by 750 resolution, while the 7 Plus can provide full HD resolution in its larger display. However, the Note 7 has a Quad HD display, and it has an always-on feature, so you can have a little bit of information always at the ready there, and it's also a Super AMOLED display providing a lot of colors that can be changed in the settings. Performance should not be a problem with either of these phones, as we have the Snapdragon 820 powering the Note 7, even if its 4GB of RAM feels a little bit low for all of the different capabilities that the Note 7 can bring. On the other hand, you have the iPhone and the iPhone 7 Plus, the two of which use iOS 10. Now, iOS is a completely different beast that doesn't require quite as much processing power as the Android phones of the world, but from there you still get 2GB of RAM in the iPhone 7 and 3GB of RAM in the iPhone 7 Plus. For iOS, that's probably way more than enough in order to run its version of applications. And so far, we haven't had any issues with loading applications and multitasking between them using the recent app screen. When looking at hardware, the Note 7 simply has more to offer, but that doesn't mean that the iPhone is much of a slouch. The Note 7 does come with the little buddy, the S Pen, however, so for the productive types out there, using a stylus-like experience could really help out. Taking out the S Pen from the bottom right corner of the device, you can then write notes, draw, or you can actually use the pen as a mouse of sorts. And these are all features that make the Note 7 a pretty stacked device. With that in mind, it almost seems like the iPhone seems a little bit bare bones when compared to the Note 7. After all, it comes with 32GB at its base storage without any expansion available, while the Note 7 comes with 64GB throughout the board, and you can also put in a micro SD card. The fingerprint readers on both devices work very well still, though the Galaxy Note 7 does add in a new security measure, and that's the iris scanner. Now, with the fingerprint reader still available, the iris scanner might just be a feature that is available, yet not always used. As far as batteries go, the iPhone 7 has a 1960 mAh battery, while the iPhone 7 Plus will obviously have the larger of the two at 2900 mAh. Both of the iPhones, however, get trumped by the Note 7's large battery at 3500 mAh, and it also comes with fast charging on top of wireless charging out of the box. But then the iPhone takes a step back in audio when it removes the headphone jack. Now, this is going to be a controversial topic for a lot of people, but it does come with a pair of ear pods that can connect to the Lightning port. You can also use an adapter, so you can adapt your existing headphones, or use wireless headphones, including the AirPods, which have yet to come out. And speaking of change, we do move over to the cameras, and I do use plural, at least in the case of the iPhone 7 Plus. The larger of the two devices boasts a wide-angle and zoom lens that provide some different options when it comes to taking pictures and video. Both cameras are 12 megapixels, with the wider angle lens having an f1.8 aperture and the zoom lens having a f2.8 aperture, and you can get a 2x optical zoom available, as you can see in these two photos taken at the exact same spot, and these can also be used for video recording. But from there, the camera app in the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus are definitely the same as before. There aren't really any major changes to the way that you're going to use the cameras, but of course you can get a manual mode if you download an app from the App Store. The same can be said for the Note 7 with its 12 megapixel camera that is the same from the Galaxy S7 and provides some pretty good quality, as we've already seen thus far, but of course its application comes with even more modes and a pro mode for that manual control in photo. Of course, it remains to be seen which of these two will be the better performer in photo and video quality, but at the very least, you can rest assured that both of these offerings are the best that these companies have ever provided. And finally, in software, we have slightly more refined and slightly more robust versions of both operating systems. The Note 7 comes with its version of the Android operating system with a bit of refinement to make it easier on the eyes. Now, that doesn't mean that a lot of its features have gone by the wayside. There are still so many things that this version of Android can do. Everything from multi-window to everything that the S Pen can bring to even the S window, and a bunch of other features that are available if you dig deep enough in the settings. And thankfully, going through all of those menus is a little bit easier when you consider that there's so much that this phone can do. On the other hand, iOS 10 is the newest version of Apple's OS, and it does bring a few changes that might take some getting used to. It's essentially the same iOS that will be very familiar for any Apple fans, but there are some added changes. On the lock screen, you will be able to swipe to the left in order to get straight to the camera, and then you can swipe to the right for a place that widgets can live. Now, there are a very specific number of widgets that will be put onto there, but they provide some extra information that you can get to without even having to unlock the device. This same screen is also available to the left of the main home screens, where of course there is no app drawer, but it's also a place for the notifications to live, so you have an easier way of getting to them rather than just having to pull down the notification dropdown. It really comes down to what operating system you definitely want to use on the daily. The Note 7 obviously has Android, which is highly customizable, so you can get it to look and feel and perform exactly the way you want it to. And for most users, iOS on the iPhones is going to be a what you see is what you get affair. There are some applications that are exclusive to iOS that are not on Android and vice versa, but for the most part, you'll be able to get through all of your main tasks every day with no problems no matter which of these you pick. So really, it is a personal choice. The iPhone 7 and 7 Plus are available now, but it might take a little while to get your hands on the 7 Plus as they are sold out in a lot of places. Unfortunately, the same can be said for the Note 7, which is currently not on sale and will be again soon after Samsung fixes the issues that they have with the recall. Once they are widely available, however, this comparison can come down to one main thing: which one you're already loyal to. If you're an Android user, the Note 7 just might be one of the most feature-packed and well-made devices that Android can offer. And of course, if you're an Apple fan, well, this is the newest one that you can use in the iOS camp. Tab Times is your portal to all kinds of tech, and the iPhone is just the tip of the iceberg. We have a lot of coverage of it, including the drop test and the water test that you can see here at the Tab Times YouTube channel. If you want to see more about the Samsung Galaxy Note 7, you can always head on over to our sibling site, Android Authority, where you can see reviews and comparisons, and of course even more from the Note 7. But then, once you're done with all of that, head on over to tabtimes.com and then stick around at the YouTube channel, because Tab Times is all tech, all the time.